Hi guys, and welcome back to the channel. I'm your host and creator Legio, and as promised, we are back in Cities Skylines 2. And this time, it's with a whole new city and a whole new concept. And the name of that concept is going to be Gamsing County. More on the name later, I promise there is logic behind it. But let's go ahead and back out and take a tour of what we're working with here. And while I take you on the tour, I'm going to slow roll a list of mods I'm going to be using in the bottom left corner for your reference. I'll try to remember to link it down below, but I'll probably forget. Anyways, the map I'm using is called Owens Bay by Gyffes or Gyffes or Gyffes. I don't know how to pronounce your name, so if you see this, I'm sorry. And you can just find this on the Paradox mod site. And yeah, it's a decent map. It's got a great shape. There were some rough spots to it while I was playing around and tinkering with it. Mostly just along coastlines and riverbeds. The terrain kind of bumped up, so I just smoothed it out. Otherwise, really good concept. It's a great shape. Really like this inlet here. This inlet's awesome. Did a really good job with the islands out here. About the only thing I changed on the map before I started recording is I added some mountain streams over here. So this little stream right here I added in, and then this little stream over here I also added in. Please forgive the water physics in the game. I zoom in, it looks fine. See, it looks fine. But I added those in because this lake up here, it was standalone originally, and it just didn't make a lot of sense to me. Typically these mountain lakes will have some kind of tributary feeding them, so I just went ahead and added it in, and then I just wanted to add another. I might add more as we go along. And then my river overflowed right here. Just ignore that. We'll come back and fix that later. I'm not too worried about it now. But anyways, yeah, the mountains themselves are awesome. Really good mountains. Those are some shapely mountains. Yeah, good shapes to those. Starting to sound like Bonbon doing a map review here. Anyways, moving along, we are loosely basing this build off of a city called Duluth, Minnesota. If you're not familiar, it's a city way up north in the US, fairly close to Canada, which is our northern neighbor. I'll go ahead and put an image of it up on your screen of Google Earth of just me flying around in it. And the reason we're here is because one of my super fans constantly harassed me and badgered me into doing a city based on Duluth. So I gave in to peer pressure. You got your way. Congratulations, sir. But let's talk about what we plan to do, and then we'll get into the fast play. So the main concept is I'm not going to have a major metropolitan area. The map is just too hilly for that. Let me go ahead and show you. There's a lot of terrain, a lot of elevation to it. So my main thought process is where it's flat is where there's going to be city. So I'm going to have two major cities in the area, being right here and then over here. We are not keeping the highway. We are going to change some of the stuff up. I like the concept he's going for here, but I'm going to change it and adjust it. This highway is also going to go away. But main city here, and they're going to be in those locations because I'm probably going to put a port like right in here, like a harbor there, small harbor over here, and those will be the main anchor cities of the area. Then we'll have a bunch of satellite cities throughout the region. Like I'm thinking some towns and villages in this valley right here that could be neat. Maybe a couple off this river, not too big. We don't have a lot of buildable space there. Can do something with it. Possibly a bigger town over here, nothing big, but something right in here. We'll see how it develops. This could possibly be like a coal mining town, because I do plan on doing some mining on this map. I don't do a lot of mining on my builds, so that could be kind of fun. So a couple cities dotted here and there, mostly just kind of zigging and zagging in the valleyways. But this is mostly going to be a lot of nature. I don't think the series is going to take too long because it's not going to be an extensive build. I'm basically going to free play with what the map gives me. Yeah, might do something with this peninsula out here. I'm not quite sure yet. It's actually hillier than you would think. Yeah, you see how that's a lot of elevation. It's on the border right there, which I can't play with. So we'll see what I can do here. I might flatten a little bit of it out, but can't go too crazy with it. Anyways, yeah, that's the overview. Enough of my rambling. Let's go ahead and jump into the fast play and get to it. I'll see you guys in a little bit. Alright, so jumping in here, I wanted to discuss and point out a few things. First, you might notice that the LUT is different from my opening dialogue, and that would be because the Lumina mod got an update while I was building and working in the game, and it became unstable, so I had to unsubscribe from it for the time being. It made the game look like a photo negative, which is pretty artistic, and it looked cool, but it was terrible for gameplay. You guys would not have been able to see what I was doing, because I couldn't see what I was doing. Hopefully that bug gets squashed pretty soon. Also, I got this episode out a little bit later than I wanted to. That's for two reasons. First, I was out of town for a whole week in training down in Little Rock, Arkansas, so I spent most of my time in a hotel room daydreaming about Cities Skylines instead of getting to play it, so that sucked. Little Rock was, not to hate on it, it's not my cup of tea. I'm happy to be home. Also, Mrs. Legio had a medical procedure fairly recently, so I had to take care of her for a few days, so that delayed me. And she is extremely sorry to you guys about that. It was super selfish of her, but she's doing a lot better now, so I can get back into this. Also, I do want to say my AC is running really hard right now, because at the time of recording this, it's 101 degrees outside with a heat index of like 110. So you'll most likely hear that in the background just humming along. Anyways, the first thing I started working on was building a bridge over the mouth of the bay, and I do plan on detailing that later. Right now I'm focusing on just kind of drawing out the roads for the region, kind of get a sight image of what I want to build and what I want to work with. I made that bridge about 50 meters tall, and that's just to ensure ships could pass easily underneath it. A little bit of future proofing there. I always had the problem of leaving my bridges too short, not enough height to them. And then we just kind of start tracing out the highways. I added way more highways to the map than what were originally there, and I redrew what was there. I like the geography of the map, but I wasn't necessarily a fan of the highways. So if the creator sees it, it's not hate, it's just creative criticism, I guess you could say. And yeah, so once we trace out our highways, I wanted to have them be more narrowed and focused than what I usually do, and I did that by following the terrain. Most of the paths will wind through valleys and follow the topographic lines as you see me working here. I really tried to follow the terrain on this as best I could. I did my best to respect the topography, so there's my shout out to City Planet Plays. And I did adjust the terrain as I needed. You'll see me do that throughout. Mostly it's just making things look natural, like right here. Just making that cliff end up being natural, just kind of smoothing it out. Because in reality, they would manipulate the soil and everything to what they need. And I'm just doing that to get a fit for what I want the city to look like and, you know, make sure it makes sense. And as I was building on the map, I soon realized how cramped everything was and how difficult it was going to be in some places to build your typical infrastructure. And that's for things like the airport, universities, and just the standard suburban sprawl that you'll have. It's going to be a tight map. I'll find ways to squeeze them in, don't you worry. I'll just have to get kind of creative with the placement of some things. Some things are just going to be downsized, or we may leave them out altogether. I'm not sure. We'll see how things develop. I'm pretty excited, and I am up for the challenge on this one. A good chunk of this episode is actually spent on building interchanges. There's a couple reasons for that. First, I had to reacquaint myself with the road building mechanics of CS2 again. I took some time away from CS2 to work on a CS1 build. If you haven't checked that out, I'll put the series up in the top there. I'm working on a Florida-inspired city, if you will, but a better version of a Florida city. I call it Thunder Bay. You should check that out. I think it's turning out really good. And I'm going to try to flip-flop between the two series as best I can. I'll probably stick with CS2 for a little while because, you know, that's what's popular on YouTube. My views definitely show that's the case. But yeah, anyways, yeah, I had to relearn the road mechanics for CS2, and it took me a little while because they are different. And I also spent a lot of time playing with the Move It mod for the first time in CS2, so a lot of experimentation occurred, a lot of it off screen. And the new Move It mod is for sure different than what I'm used to. I'm hoping they get a lot of the older features into this at some point. I can tell the bones are there. It looks good. It does feel natural. The marquee tools there and everything. I'm hoping we get the copy and paste feature and the align heights and slopes and everything. I'm sure that's to come. I just need to be patient with it. I do like the addition of those node manipulators. That's what I call the little purple lines that pop up when you use it. That was a huge benefit to adjusting the roads. Somewhat akin to the node mod in the original Cities Skylines. Then you'll probably notice during this build I used a lot of modified T interchanges a lot. That was pretty much unintentional. I didn't mean to do that. It just kind of happened. I just built what made sense at the time, and it somehow always defaulted to being a modified T interchange. Which, isn't too unrealistic. They are fairly common in America. They're not the most common interchange, but you see them quite a bit. And cards on the table, these are just placeholders for right now. As regions grow, I do expect to replace these interchanges with something better as I work out to those areas and figure out what I want to do with them. This map is still kind of an open, blank canvas to me. I only have the really big areas more or less known where they're going to be. I don't know what I'm going to build there just yet, but I have the big areas more or less figured out where they're going to be, and it's just making everything make sense as we go along. Hopefully that makes sense. I kind of rambled on that one. So earlier in the episode, I hinted at the naming convention that I'm using for the map of Gamsing County, and it ties into our history lesson for the episode, so let's go ahead and discuss that while we're at it. Gamsing is my Europeanization of the word Onigamasing, which is an Algonquian word that was used by the local Ojibwe tribe for the area, and it roughly translates to at the little portage. So I kind of stole the name and butchered it for my own means. I'm kind of just following in the steps of my European forefathers with that one. And for the history lesson this episode, we will be discussing the Algonquian people. Now, firstly, when you say Algonquian people, what you're referring to is a large group of indigenous people who shared a common language family. It's pretty similar to the Romance languages such as French, Spanish, and Italian. It's where you have common speaking patterns, words, and grammar, but there are distinct differences in dialects. So you kind of have a root language and then subtle differences here and there as you get away from it. And there's also a common mistake most people make when talking about these people. It's a mistake I'm sure I'm going to make going forward, so I apologize. A lot of people will just say Algonquin, but that's a specific tribe of people, whereas Algonquian encompasses the larger linguistic group as a whole. So let's go ahead and take a closer look at the Algonquian speaking people, and in later episodes I'll dive more into the Ojibwe people and the other tribes that will influence Gamsing County. Also, if someone in the crowd is of the Algonquian speaking peoples, please leave a comment below to either verify or correct what I'm about to say. I'm not a part of the tribe and I will welcome the feedback because I want this to be as informative and accurate and as respectful as I can possibly be with this. So the Algonquin people were traditionally inhabiting the area of the Ottawa River Valley and the surrounding regions in what is now modern-day Quebec and Ontario and Canada. But their sphere of influence included most of the Great Lakes region in the US and Canada. They even reached down into the Atlantic coast in the modern-day New England region of the US. And their name Algonquin is actually derived from the Maliseet word Elekamkwik, meaning they are of our relatives or allies. Hopefully I pronounced that right. Historically, the Algonquins were a semi-nomadic people, relying on a mixed economy of hunting, fishing, and gathering, with a little bit of agriculture here and there. They were skilled in navigating the vast river systems of their territory using birch bark canoes, which became a vital part of their way of life and their trade networks. The Algonquin people were among the first indigenous peoples to encounter European explorers in the early 17th century, including Samuel de Champlain, who is going to come up later on in our history lessons, I promise. And these early encounters with the French led to alliances and participation in the fur trade, which brought significant changes to their society. The fur trade introduced new goods and technology, but it also brought the challenges such as increased competition with other indigenous groups in the area, and the spread of European diseases, which devastated many of the communities. I've talked about that at length in previous episodes. I'm not going to get into it right now. Just know disease is bad. The Algonquin did play a crucial role in the French and Indian War from the year 1754 to 1763, and they aligned with the French against the British. And despite their alliances and military efforts, the Algonquin, like many other indigenous groups, faced increasing pressure from European colonization, leading to significant land loss and displacement. I plan on doing a very deep dive into the French and Indian War later on, so please be patient for that. That war had a massive impact on the indigenous population, and it really kind of shaped the future for how not just the French and British were going to interact with native tribes, but also how the American people were going to interact with the tribes. It left a lasting legacy that, in my opinion, still affects us to this day. So we will talk about that later. I've got to do that war justice, because a lot went on with that war, and it's always mentioned in American schools, but it's never really fully covered. So we'll get to it later, I promise. Rant over, moving on. Algonquin culture is deeply tied to the natural world. Their spiritual beliefs are centered on animism, which is the idea that all living things, animals, plants, and even inanimate objects, all possess a spirit. And the Algonquin people held, and they continue to hold, ceremonies to honor these spirits, seeking to maintain balance and harmony within their environment. One of the most important ceremonies is that of the Medewiwin, or the Great Medicine Society, which is a spiritual and healing practice among the Algonquin and other Algonquian-speaking peoples. The Medewiwin is both a religious society and a healing practice that involves rituals, songs, and the use of sacred herbs and plants. Storytelling is also a fundamental part of Algonquin culture, as it is with many other Native American tribes. Oral traditions and storytelling is a major part of most North American and South American indigenous peoples. Major influences there. And in traditional Algonquin society, they were organized into bands or groups of related families that all lived together, and they would make their decisions collectively, so more or less they were a democratic society. And they would appoint leadership. Leadership was often based on a consensus within the group, and they would appoint a chief or an ogima based on their wisdom and their experience, and also their ability to lead. The role of the chief was not one of absolute power. They were not authoritarian like that, but it was a position of respect, and they held the responsibility to the community. And if they failed in their duties to lead and provide for the community, they could be removed and punished. I kind of wish we would follow this example a bit better in today's society, but what are you going to do? And the Algonquin also had a strong social and political network with other indigenous groups, particularly those of the Wendat, also known as the Huron, and the Innu, also known as the Montagnais. And they traded with these people and formed alliances. These alliances were essential for their survival, particularly during times of conflict with other indigenous groups or European settlers. I plan on talking about this a little bit later, because there's kind of a boogeyman for the Algonquin people, and that of the Haudenosaunee, better known as the Iroquois. And I plan on talking about them much later on, but yeah, so these alliances were formed out of necessity to benefit everyone involved. And colonization brought a significant disruption to Algonquin society, as it did with most native indigenous people. Treaties with European powers often resulted in the loss of their traditional lands and resources, and it led to a lot of displacement of the Algonquin community. And in Canada, the Algonquins were eventually confined to reserves, where they faced extreme poverty, a loss of their culture, and forced attempts at assimilation. And we're going to talk about those issues more going forward. I want to do that justice, and I don't really have enough time with about 6 minutes left in the episode to really do it justice. So we will talk more about these people in depth moving forward. This kind of gave you a snapshot or a snippet into the Algonquin people, just a really brief how do you do with it. And if you enjoyed this lesson, because I know I certainly did, North American indigenous peoples are among my favorite topics in history and society to discuss and research. I find these cultures very fascinating, so this was kind of a selfish pick on my part for the lesson, and I'll admit that unashamedly. But if you did enjoy the lesson, you know what to do down below, just the typical YouTube stuff. Hit the buttons, click the thumbs up thing, and for real, leave me a comment down below, because there's a lot of information to these people. It's just kind of hard to find on the internet. It's much better to get it from the actual source. So if you are among those people of the Algonquin, please leave something down below. I'd greatly appreciate that. But enough of that. Let's get back to what we're doing on the screen, because we do have some stuff to talk about on there. Alright, so while I was prattling on with our history lesson, we actually got quite a bit accomplished on screen. We got the vast majority of our highway network slapped down, and I was really happy with the way it turned out. I think it gives us a really good blueprint going forward for when we want to expand the region. And I was really happy with how we respected a lot of the terrain and the topography of the map. There was some manipulation of the terrain, but nothing major, and I can definitely sleep at night. So that's what really matters. What I also got built was the skeleton or the blueprint for the first central business district, or the downtown of Gamson County. There's going to be a couple little business district areas, but this is going to be the main one and the oldest one. And just so you guys know, I'm not going to name these communities. I'm going to rely on you to name these communities. So if you have a good name for the area, please put it down below. The theme I'm going for typically is Native American styled names. So if you have something like that, that'd be great. But if not, I'll take any good sounding name will work. So yeah, please put that down below. And now what I'm beginning to work on here is something I've never actually built in Cities Skylines, and that is a diverging diamond interchange. I don't know why I've never built one of these, because they're amazing. They are what I call a traffic killer, as long as you build them right and it works. Like, obviously, because that's what every interchange in America is going to now, is diverging diamonds. They literally just built one by my house, and it's terrific whenever people finally figure out how they work. So yeah, I had to use a lot of YouTube tutorials on how to build this though, because since I've never built one, I just needed the assistance. So thank you to the community for basically doing all the work for me, and I just copy and pasted what you did onto the screen here. But yeah, we get this built using a lot of Move It. You don't see that on screen so much. I show a little bit of it, not a lot, because I sat this down and it's really messy. Like, the ramps are just kind of cattywampus. They're all messed up. But I do touch that up a little bit. You'll probably see it in future episodes that I tighten this up and make things look better. Overall, I'm really happy with the way this turned out, and I love the positioning of it. I put it right next to our downtown central business district, because you know that's going to generate a whole lot of traffic, and I wanted to get ahead of the game and be proactive with my traffic, because I've noticed with Cities Skylines 2 on Reddit threads and on YouTube and all the other mediums for this game, once you hit about 50 to 60,000 population, traffic just kind of kills your city. So I wanted to be proactive in that and just get ahead of it, and hopefully it works. Who knows, it may not. A lot of things don't work for me, but it is what it is. And I'm just kind of finishing out the grid. That little area, I'm not sure if I want to leave it like that. I had an internal debate of, do I leave the entrance into the central business district like that where it splits, or do I do a roundabout? I had an internal debate of, well, efficiency wise, a roundabout's going to be way better. They typically are. But would the urban planners here have that kind of foresight? And this road network's probably old. It was probably built in the late 1800s or early 1900s is when it was really getting flushed out, because the city was probably born out of the opening of the Erie Canal in New York and a lot of that kind of stuff. Like, that's the kind of thought process I'm putting into this. So we'll see what comes of that. And right there, you're seeing the awesome, powerful effects of what Move It can do with nodes now, because the old node controller could do that. And in City Skylines 2, I'd had to destroy that and rebuild that intersection a couple times to get it to work right. And then right here, I'm just kind of finishing up with what I call a roundabout neighborhood. And that's where I just kind of put off these little branches, end them, and terminate them with roundabouts. It's a great way to butt right up to that highway there. It's how I like to end things. And speaking of ending things, we're getting towards the end of the episode, guys. So if you enjoyed what you've seen and what you heard, please do the typical YouTube stuff down below, and I will see you guys in the next episode. Have a good day.